Well, hello folks, it's amazing indeed. I'm going to do this video tonight. I'm in with Mexico, Attorney General of Mexico. Pretty exciting, and yes, I'm going to be going over the 51st and 52nd state of the United States of America. And why? Why is that so important? Well, amazingly, in the minority, extreme reaches of economic minority, there's something called purchasing power parity in relation to your GDP. And this is something Vladimir Putin and the Federation of Russia run on. And you know what? You can't really take it away from them, can you? When you see the results of Ukraine against a vast swath of countries and just pumping money and military into Ukraine made very little difference. In fact, hardly any difference at all. Another issue was absolutely the fact that it didn't matter for Russia, all the sanctions, trade embargoes, the worst the world's ever seen, did not affect Russia in any major way. And I mean, when I say that, any other countries in the Western Hemisphere, bam, if that had been Canada, Mexico, and others, you'd have watched them go kaputski, or UK, or we could go on and on. That did not happen for Russia. And this is why purchasing power parity, which is, folks, which is the idea that, yes, you have gross domestic product, an average value that every member of the country contributes to, and you get an overall value of your country's economic might. But at what is the cost of living to the average citizen or subject of that country? And when you take those two factors together, meaning a real GDP marker, that's what we're really talking about, real GDP, you realize China has now far outpaced the United States of America and is exponentially growing. India, that was a joke of the old British Empire, is now more than 8 times as powerful in economic might than the United Kingdom. And why is that? When you take UK's GDP versus how much it costs the average UK citizen to live, you realize the government doesn't function very well at all. Now, America is second place today. You look at population versus China, you realize America is still number one. But in the idea of overall GDP and that cost of living, China's winning against the United States, which spells disaster in the long run. When we look at Russia, we realize Russia's way more powerful than all of the little others. When you take away China with its massive population, India with its massive population, and the United States of America, Russia's in 4th place. And for good reason. Good reason. They don't tax the hell out of their citizens. They don't borrow like drunken sailors against their citizens. And regardless of how you feel about China, they are not taxing anywhere remotely close to what all of the monarchies, the European Union, and many, many others are. Canada is now a joke. A joke. We're worse off than Mexico. The idea of snow Mexicans makes sense when you look at what's the cost of living. Not everything's about money, said Vladimir Putin. Money for the few. And yes, every country has their oligarchs. Folks, Elon Musk, for example, and the Democrats are much worse in their baloney. But this is coming on mainstream now. When you look absolutely at the results of economics in relation to how a government taxes, how a government borrows against you, the people. When you look at Elon Musk, 80% of his wealth that he's holding comes from taxpayers and taxpayers alone, whether they're taxed for it or they're borrowed for it. those EV subsidies, his space rocket ships, using entirely Russian math formulas, Russian science that is already proven by decades ahead in Russia. Those formulas tell you you're not going to escape in those designs the gravity of Earth without twice the amount of power, which is showing in Elon Musk's repeated failures. He doesn't have the payload. And taxpayers are funding that. Not directly. USA, the government isn't saying, hey, let's increase taxes. They're saying, don't worry, the taxes we collect, and then when we go to Congress to borrow more money at the end of the year to keep this system going, the massive federal deficits are redistributed to programs like Elon Musk's and many, many others. Cockamamie and foolish. And it increases the cost of living for all Americans. Now, folks, how do you lower that cost of living effectually without disturbing the GDP? Basically, increasing your purchasing power parity in the world of nations. Well, you look at Mexico and Canada. Canada, you take it as a state, massive resources with its low population. You take Mexico with its high population, lower resources. You transition with investment as a state. Things that work great in those climates. When we talk about green energy, like Nevada, when you talk about solar or other aspects of generation, those work great in places like that where the sun shines all day long and you have that ability. Now the population redistributes, and Canada naturally, with its high resources, gets developed. You get the investment, and you're not butting heads and borrowing against people to make things happen. They naturally go. You change borders and boundaries. United States military federally would move to the Arctic where they're needed, where they're supposed to be, where you can actually develop trade routes into Russia and into China. You move the border. So you're not increasing costs, you're changing location. Mexico, you're increasingly shrinking the amount of massive government spending on that U.S. border. It becomes a narrow Central America border. 15 times less, massive money is relinquished. You're saving people a heck of a lot of money. And you start harvesting resources in the country appropriately without borders and boundaries and third-party governments basically saying that, yeah, you got your country flags, but you could be a state. And instead of paying double the amount for federal governments and middlemen, you're only going to have one. And a more freer system to trade and actually trade as partners. The savings are epic. It's in the trillions upon trillions of dollars, which adds to the purchasing power parity. Donald Trump and the GOP see it. At least Donald Trump does. I don't think Elon Musk's on board with any of that. You can cut government spending. You can cut government wages. That does nothing economically for purchasing power parity. In fact, it goes the other way. It ups the cost of living. You're going to have more unemployment. And if you don't develop resources or primary sector GDP, you've got nothing. This is real, credible, verifiable. I hope it makes sense to people. I hope it does. When you don't have these borders and boundaries, restrictions, and third-party governments, because I can promise you, cost of living largely comes from only one source, which Western governments have never wanted to showcase. Donald J. Trump is the first one wanting to showcase this, seeing the Russian reality. And you can say, yeah, they're greatly weakened. Of course they are right now. They just fought the entire NATO in a war. And for all intents and purposes, they won, and they're not crushed. Contrary to what everybody says, the average Russian is not dying in the streets. Our interest rate's really high, and it's scary. no one's buying a house in Russia right now, or at least in the idea of loaning out or buying things right now of long-term investment style or racking up credit cards, because you'll be tits up. That's not happening in Russia, and businesses with loans are paying and driving their force, and it's working, and the people aren't suffering like they are out west. Look at UK, look at Israel. This is all reality. Look at it. Look at it. This is not great models of economics in New Keynesian economics anyone should be following, unless you want absolutely a debt-slaved society, third world of class structure societies, and it's all monarchical, and that's what's garbage about it. Donald Trump's saying, no, you want to play ball with us, you're going to adopt our economics, and he's clamping down on American companies and Americans. And this is why absolutely the 51st and 52nd state matter. In purchasing power parity, obviously the Canadian healthcare system makes sense in the North American model, contrary to what everyone says. Is it perfect? No, Canadians. A two-tier is the way to go. Transition for companies, professionals, big business to move into when they want to be competitive with each other, offer heightened health services. That's the tier 2 system. Contrary to what the Canadian government tells you in its oligarchy, some people say, oh, these are cartels, and maybe that makes sense. I wouldn't use that word for the Crown corporations. That's not quite right in Crown, and always try to tell people that. It's about class structure and controlling masses and keeping you in a certain class. And I think that two-tier model, amalgamation with USA, can be done under the 51st state of Canada that makes sense for America and all Canadians. And you would see universal health care for everybody, a bare bones minimum that would span Mexico, increasing their purchasing power parity, and of course the United States. And these are not small numbers, folks. This would launch USA in its new population. Do the math, half the population at that point of China, but yet massive increase in GDP, and the purchase power parity would come together. And then you don't have such a debt-slaved society. That's where Donald J. Trump wants to go. Will he get there with Elon Musk? I don't believe so. But I don't think Donald J. Trump, as he goes, he's a very smart man, is going to eat everything Elon Musk says. So that's my video. I may shoot one tonight to make up for last night, folks. May not. I don't know. We'll see how it goes with Mexico. It's a big deal for me tonight. I've had lots of sleep. Went to bed early. So we'll see how it goes. If I see you, I see you. If I don't, I don't. But I promise you, Friday, launch. It's going to be a makeup. It's going to be an exciting weekend. I want to do a important showcase. I don't want to lift the lid off of that, but I want to do a major showcase this weekend too. So it's busy, going upwards of the 20th of December here. Then I'm home for Christmas, taking an absolute break from all of this with my family. I miss my children. Can enjoy all of that. And then look for me on the 6th. But from now to the 20th, and then it's a major break till the 6th. And then we're going to get off to the races. It's going to be exciting. Love you all. Share. Get this important message out there, because things are changing. The old world guard is going down the toilet. UK purchasing power parity. Folks, who the hell would want to be following UK today? What is wrong with Canada? Canada is more powerful in purchase power parity than the United Kingdom. That says it all. Wake up. And Israel, yikes. Right there with UK, yikes. Who would want any of that? Not me. And I won't sell the lie. And it's amazing that I was in as the minority just 4 and 8 years ago, laughed at, ridiculed, joked. This is now in your face majority coming forward, at least with Republicans and GOP. A new honesty seen in media and orgs. I can't believe it. I love it. It's just, I can't believe this last month. And more, everything we're talking about is going to come to pass. And you're all going to see it. And thanks for staying the course. Because this is what it's all about. Staying the course, working at it day after day and never giving up. And then seeing the fruition come together. It's amazing. And I'm excited, and so should all of you be, for the next 4 years. Because arguments are going to be made that make sense. And we're going to be cutting edge, front line of that makes sense. God bless. Bye now. Share. Get it out there. Be the difference. Be the change. Bye now.